Hey guys, Generation Dragons, episode 17. We have a special guest today with us. I'll leave that to Steve to do the introduction, but I want to say thank you, everyone that's watching and listening to us right now. And we really appreciate it. Continue to listen because it'll be a good conversation today. Anywho, Steve, if you want to introduce our special guest, it would be greatly appreciated.
Thanks, Clint. So today we have Robert Viger on. We invited, I should say, Robert in today to talk about game restoration and preservation, more the preservation side of things. But before I get into too much to it, I'll switch really quickly over to Robert to say hi and tell us a little bit about yourself. And then we got a few questions we'd like to ask you about and open up your mind with some of this stuff. And that said, Robert.
Hey, thanks for having me. So my name is Robert. I've known Steve for years now, and we've always been talking about retro games. But I'm tangentially involved with a U.S.-based nonprofit called the Video Game History Foundation. I've done some volunteer work for them, and their goal is to preserve the history of video games. And because that I'm familiar with enough of the topic that Steve thought it would be cool enough to have me here. So I hope I don't disappoint.
No, I'm sure you won't, but that's really cool. So you're actually the first person I've spoken with that's been part of that or is part of the foundation, because that's the one thing I've always seen them. I've always heard other podcasts talk about it, so it's great to actually finally meet someone who's involved in it, because it's as much as I love having my own little museum of collections here, it's not quite the same and what's involved in what you've been doing. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I got a bit of a heads up on what Robert's going to talk to because we've talked about this in the past before. So I think you're going to like it a lot. And I just saw you guys hit it off right away as soon as you met. You know, you noticed your pins like within seconds. And but yeah, just to get on, and so we don't get off topic right away. Usually we do. But Robert, how did you get involved in this, and why? What brought you into it?
So I've always been kind of interested in retro video games, probably because I started watching YouTubers about it. And I was listening to a podcast one day, and they were talking about how this nonprofit called the Video Game History Foundation started. And having just been employed, I just straight out of school, got my first job, I started giving money to their Patreon. And I was giving money at a tier where where I could join like a monthly hangout. And from there, I just got to get to know the people there. And when some opportunities came up, I just jumped on it to volunteer with them.
That's cool.
I remember that. I remember very well when it happened and getting the lowdown, but I won't get into that too much. So when you got involved with this, before it led up to some of the game preservation that you were doing, what were you doing with the team or the guys you followed and supported their Patreon? What did you guys do together online before you actually did stuff that when you got to go down and do more?
Honestly, it was mostly just discussions. Up until really 2019, again, I was just someone who's giving money to their Patreon. So I was just going there, giving there, chatting with them, find out what's going on, what's the latest news on video game preservation, what kind of weird stuff do they have, that sort of thing.
That's cool.
Oh, you want to jump with the next one, Clint?
Oh no, yeah, sure. So great. So that with the game preservation under the foundation that you're part of, what led you to, like, what have you done with that then? Since you mentioned in 2019, and then you started kind of being more involved. So what kind of what did you do? What have you done that kind of assisted in that direction?
So anyway, so the main thing that we're here to talk about is in 2019, I and a few other people associated with them went to Minneapolis, where Game Informer is based out of. And from there, the organization as a whole spent about a month digitizing all the archives that Game Informer has held on to for years. So those guys are pack rats. They never threw anything away. They've never moved offices. And so they just had this room full of filing cabinets full of documents and paraphernalia. So primarily we were there not so much for the games. We were there for the documents. This could be stuff like the marketing material. So we found the first cover of Sonic the Hedgehog the first Game Informer cover that had this really awful art of Sonic the Hedgehog on it, but it was great. It could either be stuff like I found it was a letter signed by Senator Joe Lieberman, sent to the editor-in-chief of Game Informer, Andy McInerney, about the Mortal Kombat controversy going on, and this is
Oh,
their
that
push to
would
try
be
to create the
so cool
ESRB.
to see.
So yeah, it
Man,
was really cool just to hold that in my hand.
yeah, that's when the ESRB and all the game rating. Well, first it was when it first came out, it was kind of voluntary of the companies, but then it led into what we have now today. But yeah, I remember that very well. I was really big into games back then, and the whole MK2 thing, and I just even remember the trials on TV and like Nintendo sitting pretty, being the good guy and all this because of their standards, and Sega, being really attacked.
How could you forget Night Trap?
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
right.
Night Trap, right?
I still have that.
You have for the Sega CD.
I have it for the Sega CD and the 3DO.
It came out on the 3DO too.
Yeah, maybe I'm wrong. Yeah, it did because I have it on my arcade as well, on the 3DO.
Huh.
But I should have pulled it out tonight just for this. So I could do, yeah. But yeah,
Well,
man, this is really, really cool. So, sorry, Clint, were you going to say something?
oh no, I was just gonna say, I just asked about the documents and stuff like that. I know, obviously, maybe you can't go. So where's that stuff stored? Were you guys doing this on behalf of like to help Game Informer out? Were you doing it to do like what was it? Is it accessible to people? Like how does that work with that?
So our primary goal was to get it digitized. So because a lot of this was just existed as paper copies,
Right.
and realistically, GameStop isn't doing very well, and they're the parent company of Game Informer.
Game Informer.
So part of the project was just get this stuff documented before who knows what's going to happen with it.
Right. Yeah.
Currently, it's this all this data belongs to Game Informer, so it's with them. So ultimately, ultimately, what they plan to do with it is up to them. But the main goal of this was to get it digitized, and so that it could be carried around and preserved.
That's cool.
So I remember when you first told me about this because I was fascinated. I never really even considered this as something to do, but it makes a lot of sense. So in my head, I always had it like if it's on a CD, it's forever because that's how I remember CDs came out, and they're just perfect. They never die. And then you told me about bit rot, and I'm like, what? And
Yeah.
so
So some of the
how much
marketing material was on CD. So like a lot of press kits from early E3s. Sometimes we put on an FTP site, or sometimes they'll just give like a CDR with like a really poorly written note on top of it. And that was partly what we were doing, is just copying all that information. But bit rot's a real thing. The CDs, especially the cheap CDRs, are not forever. They're going to rot and they're going to become unreadable. It's just a
matter of time.
matter of time. So a lot of this, so we had a stack of discs that just we could not rip.
That's what I was going to ask you. Was there anything you couldn't save?
all the time.
digitized?
We saw some, like I think it was some early promotional GTA 3 stuff we couldn't save. But there was some really cool stuff we were able to save. For example, we found this press kit for Superman 64,
Oh,
and
no
it had
way.
a bunch of pre-released footage that I've not been able to find anywhere else.
One of the worst games of all time, quote unquote. And that'd just be something you'd have to keep. Like it's just too good.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really cool. Well, so what was it like when you walked into their collection room? I guess
like,
they rooms.
oh.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I really hope that no one from Game Informer is actually listening here, but it's actually really disorganized and messy.
Probably just because of the type of jobs they had. They probably just kept finding stuff.
Like, they've been around for a while, and they have like this 2-story office, but like you would think that they would be told to downsize, but most of these offices were just empty. Or there was like the top floor where all the editors were, and the bottom floor were basically, they had a few business people and they had receptionists, but that was mostly empty and actually pretty disorganized. But again,
they're all writers, right? So like they don't care about organization.
So the upstairs was a lot better organized, and
okay.
we didn't spend too much time up there. But what they did let us do is they brought us up to their library, where they had a boxed copy of nearly every North American released console game.
That's cool. That's really cool.
Wow.
And we got to walk around there and just see all these titles. But even then, there was like a corner of it that was just all the stack of these collector's editions. Because what are they going to do with Final Fantasy 13 Lightning Returns?
Yeah. That's true.
What are they going to do with that collector's edition? They can't throw it out because they want to keep it, but it just takes up space.
Yeah.
There were even some stuff that I don't think actually ever came out.
That's cool.
That would be cool. Like seeing like a game that got canceled or never was finished for whatever reason, but then having like a pre-release or something and to review, and then it never came out. That'd be kind of neat to see. Just
That would. So before you go on with that, Steve,
yeah.
I wanted to ask. So I know you obviously can't go into too much on the details, but I would assume that you'd see more of the pre-release stuff. Like that would be more pre, like Sega Saturn, pre PlayStation 2 era, right? Like when magazines were the main way of getting information out, so they'd get the preview discs of the game that may or may not ever come out. So something like a Dreamcast game that was supposed to come out for the Dreamcast and then it got canceled.
Yeah, something like that. It was out in Japan. It was meant to be localized, but they just never did localize it.
No, that's cool. That'd be so cool to see. That's awesome.
Yeah, like so. I should have done a little bit more research on this for the question I'm about to ask because I should know this. But when did Game Informer first start? Like, what's the earliest stuff they had in there?
Oh, you think I'd know that? But honestly, I think they generally started about 27 years ago. So let's say 28 years ago. So let's say early 90s, I believe. So I want to say that they would have started on the Super Nintendo. No, they would have started around 16-bit era, because I'm pretty sure that Sonic the Hedgehog cover I was talking about was their first cover.
That's cool. Sonic the Hedgehog, was it the first Sonic the Hedgehog?
It was Sonic 1, I believe, yeah.
Yeah. That's really neat, man. But
yeah, 1991. 1991. I looked at it the other day. I was like, oh, I have to figure out what was the first day. No, that's really...
I'm going to date myself here, but I had my grade 8 grad shirt 91.
Oh my, yeah. 1991, I was knee high to a grasshopper. No, I was like 3 years old. Yeah.
I was born in 94.
Oh,
someone makes you feel old. Welcome to my everyday. Oh man! All right, so moving on, just to go on. So we kind of touched on this before. We were asking a little bit like what brought you into retro gaming to begin with, but if you had to say like an or a wow moment, this was the game that hooked you for retro games, what was it?
It wasn't a game in particular. So I kind of alluded to this earlier, but it was honestly the Angry Video Game Nerd. Well, I remember being in middle school, and I found a friend showed me his stuff online, and I thought this is hilarious. And then it made me immediately regret selling the Super Nintendo I had when I was in elementary school.
Yeah.
So since I got a job, it's just been me trying to recreate that library I had when I was a kid.
I think a lot of that is similar for Clint and I.
Yeah.
So honestly, just the AVGN stuff and the retro games, I was like, okay, I kind of want to get into this, and it just kind of spiraled from there.
What's your collection like then on your retro front?
Honestly, not that big, and that's largely by design. I don't have that much room, so I just collect stuff that I find interesting.
Right.
I don't have really much of a desire to collect an entire library from a system or anything like that. And I do like some of the more obscure stuff. I'm just looking back in my library, but it's a lot of 16-bit stuff, Sega Saturn stuff, and Dreamcast stuff mostly.
So
you're talking my language.
Before I let Clint go on you there, because this is Clint's baby. Anything Sega in that generation. Behind you, to your right, that's your wall of consoles, right?
Yes, that is this is my living room. That's my main setup, and that is basically most of the consoles I have, all hooked up into a 4K TV.
So, what consoles do you have there?
Okay,
I can tell from here what some of them are.
Genesis, NES, Super Nintendo. Then we have an analog Super NT, which is a Super Nintendo, a Wii U, a Saturn, Xbox Series X, Dreamcast, a bunch of the old, like those handheld classic consoles that Nintendo, Sony, and Sega were releasing.
The minis?
The Switch and a PS5 currently hooked up.
And
PS5,
I see you have a inkling, or not an inkling, but the octopus from Splatoon as a cushion on your chair back there.
Yeah. For a while, Nintendo had a kind of a pop-up shop in Vancouver, so I bought a bunch of stuff from them.
Nice.
Now, Clint, I know you're super big and excited about Sega, especially Dreamcast and Saturn, and that. Was there anything that you wanted to connect with or ask Rob about with the Saturn or Dreamcast? Because I know he is really big with Saturn stuff.
Ooh, no, not currently. I'd have to think about it a bit. I mean, so what's your most obscure like Dreamcast or Saturn game that you have?
Most obscure, maybe not unheard of, is probably, this is actually a funny story. When I was first there's a Vancouver Retro Gaming Expo that's not held in Vancouver. It's actually held a few blocks down where I live in New Westminster. And this is where I first got a Dreamcast. And I was going around to different stalls buying up different games. And it's okay, well, let's get the class. Let's get what are the must gets that are not too expensive. So like Jet Grind Radio, Space Channel 5, stuff like Shenmue, stuff like that. And it's okay, well, I also need to get Sonic Adventure. So I was digging through a bin and I found this Sonic Adventure. I bought it, brought it home, and then I started playing through it and said, right, this is really short. It's just like a demo. And it was the Sonic Adventure Limited Edition, which was a Hollywood video only in the States, a demo disc that was given out ahead of the launch of the Dreamcast. So I paid $15 for it. I think at the time it was going on eBay for about $300. It's hard to tell because people will sell a normal version of Sonic Adventure as the limited edition.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought limited edition was, it was special, but no, it was limited as in there was limited content in the damn disc.
That's still pretty cool to have.
That is cool. Yeah.
It's like
unfortunately,
it's
I won't get rid of my only.
Well, it's kind of like why I won't get rid of my 3DO sampler disc or things like that, just because you can't find them anymore.
Hey, I've got 4 Dreamcast demo discs from the Dreamcast magazine sitting in my pile of, they only did 13 issues of the Dreamcast magazine. I have 4 of the 13. So it's kind of cool. Like, yeah, I just got a Dreamcast light gun shipped to me from Japan, sitting in a box I have yet to open. And I don't even think I have any light gun games to play on it, except for one demo disc that has, I think, Virtua Cop or whatever that Virtua Cop version. I think it was, I can't remember the name of it now, but that's it. So
as soon as we're allowed to hang out again, I'll bring over my gun and a couple of my games and we can test your gun out with Virtual Cop or what's the other one that I have? Shit, forget. Anyway, I have a couple gun games for the Dreamcast.
Nice. So yeah, I guess we'll go back as we go off our tangent here.
We do this a lot, by the way. Like, what were we talking about?
So when you were at Game Informer, was there what was the coolest thing that you saw? I mean, I know you had mentioned that the letter from
that's
from
pretty wow.
But what else did you? Is there
Probably
anything?
The favorite thing I saw. Now this is probably not what you're looking for, but it was so they had more space than they needed, so they had this entire room that was like a Guitar Hero graveyard. It was just full of all the plastic instruments they got over the years. It was literally like maybe a 75 square foot room. Maybe it was just plastic instruments and other big accessories. Like I think there was a Steel Battalion controller in there somewhere.
I so want one of those. I could have picked it up like years ago for I think it was $50 or $70 somewhere in there, and I'm like, yeah, but it's only for one game. But I regret it because that's just such a cool piece of hardware.
It's literally just all these plastic controllers that they had nowhere else to put. And for some reason there was a script to Beyond Two Souls. It was a large piece of paper. It was large paper. It's just the script for Beyond Two Souls. I think David Cage was giving them out as like marketing.
Yeah,
but
it's pretty cool though. Like that. That's the one thing I have to say. I know that people always talk about the IGNs, the Game Informers, all the other video game things. Again, they don't get paid much or anything of that nature. At least that's what they say. But then they get to experience stuff like that, where the average gamer is like, I want that so bad. I'd pay thousands of dollars to experience that, right? Or whatever the case may be. So like, yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. Talking about game preservation and whatnot. What do you do on that? Like from that front, where have you other than the collection? Are you doing anything else? Towards ROMs and emulators? Are you into that? Are you more of a step away from the ROM and emulation world where it's kind of okay, but not kind of okay.
Mhm.
Like,
I get what you mean. Honestly, so this is where I think we're going to get a little controversial. Is I do have my own private small collection of games. Honestly, the future of preservation is going to be digital. People have their own collections, and they say that, hey, I'm going to try to do my own part to preserve it, but that's not really what game preservation really is or really needs to be. A lot of these games are backed up. Redump does an incredible job in making sure that every byte is exactly as you find on the cartridge. So yeah, there's always that intrinsic feeling of, I have the real controller with the real cartridge, but from a preservationist standpoint, that work's kind of done. I
Yeah,
know work's
absolutely.
never
I have
done,
to
but
agree with you there, but I disagreed with you when we first spoke. Simply because for me, I've always been a physical media kind of guy. I want like the actual
Mhm.
cartridge. But you're right. They die. They all break eventually. They all bit rot is something that I kind of think I knew about it, but it was always back here, and I'll never see that happen. But if you want to keep some of these games 20 years from now, this might be the
Oh,
only way you can get certain things.
I'm so sorry. Looks
No,
like I'm getting a sorry
yeah,
one
no
moment.
problem.
now, cool. All right, yeah. So you were, yeah. Right up with the game preservation, Steve. You're saying multimedia. So sorry, guys, that was our little commercial break that we had. So there's a little bit of a gap into a conversation to what happened. So, Steve, you're
It's
saying,
actually because we started fighting pretty badly and swearing about physical versus emulation. It was really messy, but we made
Steve,
up now and had a beer.
you're lucky that I can't travel to Ottawa right now.
What you will be soon though, and we'll have to take you out.
Yeah.
Well, assuming COVID ever ends and we get past that. But that said, yeah, what I was saying is I thought about it more and more, and I still prefer physical media if I'm going to buy it because I want that cartridge. But I am not opposed to having the ROM. Like right next to me, I have an arcade cabinet here that
Mhm.
is full of ROMs. And like I've redid all the minis to put the ROMs I want on it, not for the stock ones. So
Mhm.
I, I'd be lying to myself to say that I'm not into ROMs and don't appreciate it and like it. And I 100% agree with you. This might be the only way to preserve a lot of these games for years to come.
Yeah, and I want to kind of separate the notion of preserving and collecting. Now they aren't completely separate, and they both help each other out. But the point of preservation is to preserve these games and the story around these games for future generations and those who want to study them. And a fantastic example is, did you hear about this? The SimCity for NES.
No, for
There what
NES.
NES.
Yeah, I did hear about that a little bit. So I didn't think it was ever made though. Thought they did, but it never was released, right? And then it came
Yeah,
out later on
correct.
SNES. Yeah.
Yeah. So there is a version of actually the Video Game History Foundation managed to get their hands on the ROM for an unfinished version of SimCity for the NES. On top of that, they were able to find out a bunch of documents and they were able to decompile the game itself and look into it. But the interesting thing about this is that unlike the SimCity for the Super Nintendo, Will Wright was involved in this.
oh,
So
wow.
he flew out for a week or two in Japan. So this unfinished game is the result of a collaboration between Miyamoto and Will Wright.
That's pretty
awesome.
damn cool, man,
But
actually.
yeah, no, that ROM is now floating out there. You can try to play SimCity for the NES. I wouldn't say it's really worth going back to, but it's definitely interesting from an academic point of view. And yes, and no, the actual cartridge itself is in the hands of a private collector. But the
But
but
now other people can try it,
but
which
yeah,
is
the point of preservation is to back it up and have other people be able to study it and experience it.
mhm.
What's your then? So what's your thought on something like Game Pass or any of that like that nature, where when it's digital, you don't own it; you're paying a license fee, right? That's you don't actually own
Yeah, it's a
own the
service
copy of
as
it.
opposed to
And I know
owning
I
it.
say Game Pass, but I'm just saying that in general, right? Think of the
Mhm.
Wii, the eShop on the Wii, or the Wii
Even the At
U, for
Games
example.
Legends
Yeah.
arcade cabinet, that's how they do their games is through subscription.
So what's your thought on that, Robert?
I love Game Pass. I shell it to all
Yeah.
my friends.
Yeah.
Personally, it's just great that everyone has the same library. Just last night, I was playing Astroneer with a bunch of people. I would have never bought that game myself, but because all of us had Game Pass, we were all able to play it, and there was no upfront cost.
So I
Right.
want
Yeah.
to catch you on a
But-
point there, because that is a huge point. I've found myself playing games that I would never normally play simply because I wouldn't buy it. But I've played games online with my buddies now simply because we both have access to it and we can both download and try it.
Mhm.
And I with what's the game I'm playing lately? Outriders. Like, I probably wouldn't have got that on my own. It would have been like something we got way later when it came down in price. But because it was on Game Pass, I just started playing it and realized, wow, this is actually a pretty good game and great story. But anyway, I cut you off just because I think it's such a good thing, Game Pass and other services like this.
Mhm. Now, it's not without its faults. And as Clint brought up, I do think that there is a discussion that's going to happen about, games that might only exist digitally that are going to go for away forever. So like that PS3 storage issue
Yeah.
that was, thankfully,
Yeah,
Sony
they
reversed
just
the
came.
decision.
Yeah, exactly. So
But there's like hundreds of games that people wouldn't be able to get anymore. Now, thankfully, there are groups out there who are downloading and archiving all these games. So the raw data for those will still exist. But from a consumer point of view, Game Pass specifically, I just think it's a great deal.
Yeah.
It's just so convenient. And again, it's that shared library, and Microsoft seems to be going about it the right way. I'm not going to say that all potential subscriptions are going to be a good deal or even the best idea. Like, can I swear here?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Who the fuck is going to subscribe to the Ubisoft subscription service?
Well, yeah.
I know,
yeah.
right?
$15 a month to play a new Assassin's Creed every game every year.
Yeah. Well, it's the same thing with the EA Play Premium or whatever it's called. I think the EA Play Premium, where sure you get to play EA games right off the bat, but what do you? So I get to play FIFA, Madden, NHL, and whatever else. Maybe a Titanfall 3 that comes down like 4 years down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
they
it's
really
Game
got to
Pass
rope
now.
into.
yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
They really got to rope into the bigger services like Game Pass, or if PlayStation brings out theirs, something like that. I think that's the way you're going to see. Microsoft's already proved this model's working and working very well. Like, God, even when EB Games offered financings to buy a Series X or an S, if you do the math, because there's no interest, it works out cheaper to buy it from them on a 2-year plan with Game Pass if you're going to buy it anywhere. I think by $50.
Yeah, I mean that's how I got my Xbox.
Yeah, so I bought mine outright, and so did Clint. You're going to get a cheaper deal in the end of it. So, and
Now,
I
the argument
almost
could be
consider doing
made
it.
that like Game Pass, you can get Game Pass for cheaper, but at the same time,
wait, Steve and I paid $1 for it back in 2019
Yeah,
or whatever it was
right.
at E3, where they're like, "Oh, we're going to promote it for $1." Then people started doing Xbox Live Gold and extended it and extended.
Yeah, and I did as much as it would let me.
Yeah.
So I got like 2
Yeah.
years.
for me, it was just a case of, well, I wasn't really looking for the Xbox, so it was just a way. But for $50 a month, why not? For a
Right.
couple
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
and for
yeah.
Game Pass, which I was already paying for at the time.
Yeah, that's just it. So it's only like another $25 or 30 on top of
Now,
what you're already paying.
do you find that you're not actually buying more Xbox games though? Like, how's that kind of ratio going for you? You find you leveraging Game Pass more than actually purchasing a game outright, or are you going and playing it there and then like, oh, this is really sweet, I'm going to go buy it on the Switch so I can go lie in bed and play it on my Switch or whatever the case may be?
I probably use PC Game Pass more than anything else. That's where I spend most of my time. But it's kind of a mix. The way I see it is like PC Game Pass is kind of a back library of games I might have missed the first time around.
Right.
Whereas, and that's the same true for the console. Whereas, that's obviously Microsoft games are coming there and don't need to buy those anymore. But I would say even then, there's not a lot of new stuff coming out, so I'm just not using my console very much anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Plus, we're not going out anymore to the stores. It might be different than BC, but we can't go to any stores here in Ontario.
Yeah.
Now, we had a brief moment where Clint and I actually got to see each other, and we filmed one of these podcasts together, and then we went right back to lockdown.
It was our fault. It was our fault, Steve.
Yeah.
I haven't
No,
been
it was
quite as strict there, but I basically, unless I need to travel for essential reason, I can't leave Vancouver or Metro Vancouver.
Yeah.
They have like
Oh.
checkpoints on all the roads.
Oh wow. Yeah.
That's pretty strict. We
I
can't even
can-
leave our houses though.
Other than that, I'm free to go wherever. Restaurants are closed for indoor shopping, but if I need to go pick something up in a store, like a browser retro game store or something like that, they're all opening and they're fine. Just gotta wear a mask.
We can't do that. And so, I'm a big collector, and so is Clint. And it's not just games. I'm a big Transformer collector. We've go to a Walmart, you cannot buy anything but food, and everything's. You can see the Transformer on the shelf, but you can't grab it because it's all taped off. And then if you do get it somehow, it like flashes yellow at the scanner, won't let you buy it. But it's crazy because I actually find they were just funneling everyone together instead of like being more sparse. But anyway, we're getting off topic. That said, with retro gaming, Robert, I have to say, not retro gaming, sorry, with ROMs and emulation and preservation, you've really opened up my eyes a lot with things. I learned a lot about it just by talking to you, and it's pretty awesome. It sounds like I'm wrapping up. I'm not, but I don't want to forget to say thanks for joining us today and just teaching us about all this and explaining how it works. Your experience was sharing that experience with us was just amazing, and I'm going to be thinking about this mulling over my head after tonight. I know it. I just probably just be going over it. Anyway, I'm rambling. Moving on. I don't know. Before I change subjects, Clint, did you have anything more with game restoration? Or I should say preservation.
No, I don't. No, I don't think so. I don't know. I think I'm all good. I'm all good in my front here. I'm all good in my front.
How are we doing for time?
Oh, we're doing okay. We could call it a day right now if we wanted to, but we could keep chatting as well. It's either or. We're at 35 minutes right now, so
I'd say let's give it a few, and let's just say, Robert, what's your favorite game of all time? If you had to do your top 5, what would it be?
Oh God, you're putting me on the spot like that?
Yeah, I know.
You should just know this right off the bat. It should just be blah, blah, blah.
Okay, actually, yeah. So in no order, because I'm not crazy. I can't do that. So probably something like World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14. I really like my MMOs.
Yeah,
EVE Online almost makes a cut, but it doesn't quite. Probably the Halo series. I'm not gonna. It's like picking your favorite child, except for 4 and 5. Halo series, Persona 4, and Super Mario World are probably top 5.
Huh. Nice. Not bad. I think Clint would agree with 1 or 2 of yours in there, maybe, but
maybe just
maybe.
Just maybe.
Right? So I'd have to say Halo's up there for me as well, the things you mentioned. But I'm going to see if you guys, I know Clint knows this game, but my favorite game of all time, it was one of those wow moments for me, was
Leisure
Star
Suit
Control
Larry.
2. Yeah, but that was when I was like, younger, and actually still today. So yeah. Okay. Star Control 2, but the 3DO version. And I know I've chatted up 3DO a lot because it was a big system for me back in the day, but that was probably the best game I ever played at that point. That gave me like a wow moment. And I didn't have that feeling again until I played Halo Combat Evolved. So, but have you ever heard of it, by the way?
Well, I mean, you've talked about it enough to me, so I heard about it.
Yeah, good. So, yeah.
I'm sure name rung a bell, so I'm sure I saw it in one of the magazines I used to get as a kid, but no, I've never played it.
The reason I'm mentioning it a little bit more right now is because if you ever did want to try it, you can download it for free right now. It's called the Urquan Masters. People have saved it and put it up there, and basically brought it back from death because you can only get it on PC and on 3DO, but 3DO version was unique because it has voice acting.
Okay, was it good voice acting?
Yeah, and it's voice acting, but it's kind of neat. Like I've always been into sci-fi kind of stuff, and it's all about like space or exploration and meeting other races to help your cause and trading with them and building a ragtag fleet to try and free the Earth. Okay. I won't get too much into it because that's a topic for another day. But that game just really blew me away. Clint, what's your number one game of all time? I know we made Robert do 5, but
so my number one, my number one game of all time is Shenmue. That's got to be my favorite game. But
you're gonna say that? Have you seen?
I'm gonna say Shenmue. I think it's terrible.
Them's fighting words.
I am sorry, but to quote Jeff Gertzman, it's a forklift simulator for assholes.
Oh wow! Hey, hold on. When did you play Shenmue though? How old were you?
That's the caveat. Yeah. I played it like 2 years ago.
Oh, okay, so that's a little different. So, yeah, I played Shenmue when it first came out in 2000 and and then waited for Shenmue 2 to come out. I remember going to the Microplay and trying to buy it. They didn't have it. All they had was the PAL version, so obviously couldn't play it on my Dreamcast. And then it came out on Xbox and played it on the OG Xbox. And yeah, and then I had this nice, lovely. I went and got the whole Shenmue 3, jumped on that bandwagon. The light box. Here we go. I'll turn the light on. Oh, there we go. Yes, that's
Nice.
good stuff. Yes, so I'm a big Shenmue fan. As you also, if you. So yeah, Shenmue is my game. So that was a lot.
After saying that, I should also clarify I do own the Dreamcast copy of 1 and the Xbox copy of 2.
Yeah, cool stuff. That's cool.
Just to touch on that, if you do play Aircon Masters, either of you, you'll probably feel the way Robert felt about playing Shenmue because it did not age well. So playing it back in like 1993 or 4, whatever it was like a wow game to me. Kind of like when the first time when I played Wing Commander 3, seeing like Mark Hamill in live video that actually looked pretty decent and move around. But yeah, it did not age well, guys. So.
I'd say Wing Commander 3 and 4 aged okay.
You thought?
Yeah, I went back to those semi-recently, and they've aged
I played it.
okay.
It was so like pixely, and I was like, oh man, this looks like crap. But back then, I was like, this is amazing.
Steve, you got to look past that. Remember, you had an imagination back then. Now
that was back then. I'm an old man now.
Yeah, exactly. So your imagination doesn't exist. That's why these old games just don't work as well. You were on way better adventures when you were 8 years old playing Link's
Centipede.
Yeah, I guess 8 years old Centipede. Yeah, it makes more sense.
Actually, speaking of that, like I used to really kind of in my head imagine what the games were when I was playing Atari because the graphics look like shit. But like playing a game like Plaque Attacks where you're a toothpaste tube rolling in a mouth, protecting teeth from hamburgers and hot dogs and stuff like that. Like what the? Anywho, I'm getting off topic. We're probably getting around time to wrap it up.
That's it. So Robert again, like Stephen mentioned, thanks again for joining us on this. It's really great to get an insight of what you did and hopefully we'll definitely reconnect again and have conversations around what the foundation that you're part of, because I definitely like to join something like that and be part of that. So much appreciated. Thanks again. Steve, you got anything else you want to add, top up on, as the old meetings
Just to say thanks again, Robert. And, I think we will have to have a future video on you versus Clint with Shenmue. Point and counterpoint. I'll be the mediator. I think it'd be pretty fun. But in all seriousness, thanks. I really appreciate you coming out and talking about this. Before we say our goodbyes, did you want to add anything or mention where people could join or help or be part of any of this?
Yeah, I should look at their URL ahead of time. But yeah, go look at the Video Game History Foundation. Again, they're a US-based nonprofit. Any donations to them are tax deductible. And again, what they're doing is just preserving the history of the games that we play and the histories around them so that they're not lost to time. Pretty much all the movies before 1920 are gone, completely gone. The birth of a whole industry, no one can find it. And the goal of this is to try to prevent that happening with video games.
Yeah, I think that's a great cause. When you first told me about it, I just thought, didn't really know much about it. And yeah, this is just something we all have to be part of. And on that, I think we could probably wrap up.
Yes, sirree, Bob. So thanks again, everyone. Follow us if you've made it this far. We really appreciate listening to us for this long and/or watching us. So much appreciated. You know where to follow us: Game.Bot Games on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and your podcast preferred platform. Steve,
as always, keep collecting,
keep gaming, keep safe.
Keep safe.